It's not it's not a country, it's not a continent, it's a civilization. I was so amazed visiting India last year, having a conversation with Prime Minister Modi, which I admired, by the way. I know that President Lula is heading to India in the coming weeks, and he has also the mandate from MERCOSUR countries that we are eager to have as much free trade agreements as possible. But let's put the top three agreements in the world will be US, India, EU, and of course MERCOSUR and India. Paraguay recognized Palestine in 2011.
That's true.
So if the world is discussing whether to recognize Palestine as a sovereign state, why we cannot discuss that Taiwan should also be recognized as a sovereign state?
President Trump might have a few allies, but some of them are quite vocal, stand by him, and have a very different outlook when it comes to global politics and geopolitics. One such person is the president of Paraguay. I'm being joined by Mr. Santiago Peña. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. It is indeed a pleasure. Let's begin with the fact that a lot is changing when it comes to geopolitics. You are surrounded and you're in a region which has very different forms of government or leanings, so to say. But why do you see eye to eye, and why are you on the same page with Donald Trump?
I think that we share the same determination. President Trump, who is coming for a second time after waiting for 4 years, now he knows that he will be president for only 4 years and he has no time to waste. I was elected in August. I was sworn in August of 23 for only one time. I cannot be reelected. The Constitution has a ban on reelection. So I know that my time is limited and I have no time to waste. So we have a hard start at the beginning of my administration, and putting aside that we have a long relation with the U.S. Paraguay has been always a very good friend of the U.S. It doesn't matter if it's a government Republican or Democrat, but the truth is that Democrats have seen or underseen Latin America for many, many years, and Republicans always have a closer look. So when President Trump came, and he appoints Secretary Rubio, someone who has been in Paraguay the year before. And then he appoints Chris Landau as the Undersecretary of State, someone who lived in Paraguay because his father was, that was like the dream team for us. So we have engaged in a very close cooperation since the beginning of his administration.
You called the re-election of President Trump a dream come true. Is it just because of the kind of people he has appointed in his administration, or it goes beyond that?
I think it goes beyond. I think that the national security strategy that they launched a couple of weeks ago confirms that our idea, and remember, Paraguay is the only ally that Taiwan has in South America, re-emerging the Monroe Doctrine is something that we like. I mean, we like that the Western Hemisphere has a close collaboration with the U.S. This is something that has been for many, many decades, I would say. But over the last 30 years, the U.S. has underlooked South America. So now with this new vision from the Trump administration, this is good news for us. This is good news for us because we share beyond a balance of payments and trade. And I think there is something that is more fundamental. What are the core values? Why we think democracy, freedom are the things that people value the most.
We will talk about the Monroe Doctrine. But before that, you completely backed and supported President Trump's actions in Venezuela that led to the capture of Nicolas Maduro. Is Paraguay, under you, comfortable with sovereignty issues when it comes to one country invading the other?
We don't like countries invading other countries. We know the hard way. Paraguay went to a war with our three neighbors, and they took 60% of our territory in the late 1800s. So we learned the hard way. But we also learned the hard way because we lived the longest dictatorship in South America, 35 years of a military regime that ended in 1989. And something that we learned the hard way is that dictators, they don't go with pamphlets or manifestation on the streets. That's the hard truth. So even though we don't like other countries stepping in other territory, we know that there was absolutely no alternative to take Maduro, and arguing that international law should protect a dictator that have taken hostages 8 million Venezuelans who left the country, thousands who were illegally imprisoned, and stealing an election from Edmundo Gonzalez should not protect people like that. So in extreme situations, we think what the U.S. did, beyond, which is not something that you would like, but there was no other alternative. We are not going to see a change in Venezuela if that measure was not taken.
All right. President Peña, you also said that you're going to fight the good fight against drug trafficking.
Yes.
And in order to do that, you've called Nicolas Maduro the ringleader of a drug cartel that now has been banned and declared a terrorist organization even by you?
Yes, we did that together, of course, designating Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Iranian Guard also of terrorist organization. We have the advantage on being surrounded by very large countries, with Brazil particularly, but we also have the disadvantage of being next to a very large country like Brazil and criminal organizations like the Primer Comando Capital, Comando Vermelho, which are organized crimes with world reach, and they are working together with other criminal organizations. That becomes a national threat for us. So we are investing a lot in national defense, and we are trying to collaborate with as many governments as possible to fight this organization. What we saw with the measures that the U.S., the Trump administration was taking, that the risk was that as they put pressure on the Caribbean, these organizations will go south of the Caribbean, and for that, that's a very great risk. So the message that we said, you are not welcoming Paraguay. You might choose another country, you might choose another region, but as you receive the pressure from the U.S. on the Caribbean, don't think about coming to Paraguay.
Okay, but how are you using your soil then to fight the very menace, not just of drug trafficking, but also of security issues, terrorism? How are you aligned with President Trump? Are you going to get your territory?
We are very pragmatic.
Allow them to use your territory.
We are very pragmatic. First of all, we recognize that criminal organization or the organized crime needs to have an organized government, and a government that is able to organize with other governments. That's why we decided to buy planes from Brazil. We fight planes, military planes, to control their space. We bought radars from the US, and we are collaborating with all the neighboring countries, but we are also collaborating with the US, and collaboration with them is from many, many decades. What we have decided is to take a further step with this military agreement that we allow to collaborate more with the US and for them to have also a stronger presence in the southern corner.
Do you, President Peña, agree with President Trump and your dear friend Marco Rubio that Western Hemisphere is not for China and Russia to interfere and intervene in, and that America should be able to say or should control the security issues of the Western Hemisphere?
Absolutely, yes. I think
that's the Monroe Doctrine.
I absolutely yes, and of course I respect China. We do a lot of trade with China. It's actually our largest trading partner in the case of Paraguay. But we also, and again from our own experience, because it's very hard for people to understand why Paraguay continue to have a relation with Taiwan, why Paraguay supports so hard Israel and their determination to defend, is because of our own history. We were a great nation in the 1800s. We have to face a war of extermination. So we learned it the hard way. We are, and we were, and we continue to be in a tough neighborhood. And for that, we also need to rely on partners on the region and outside of the region. So we sympathize with a country like Taiwan, and we recognize as a country because they have elections, they have a military system, they have a system of government with independent branches. So they fulfill everything. I mean, I was at the UN, and a couple of days before the beginning of the UN General Assembly, there was a discussion whether to recognize Palestine. Paraguay recognized Palestine in 2011.
That's true.
So if the world is discussing whether to recognize Palestine as a sovereign state, why we cannot discuss that Taiwan should also be recognized as a sovereign state?
Well, your Chinese friends will beg to differ.
I know. The same way other countries are saying let's don't recognize Palestine. And Palestine doesn't fulfill the requirements to be a state. They don't have elected. They don't have elected authority. They were taken over by a criminal organization called Hamas.
That's Gaza, not the whole of Palestine.
Well, but it's controlled. But it's controlled by them. But it's controlled by them. So
you're part of Board of Peace.
Absolutely.
Do you have hopes? Are you hopeful that the Israel-Palestine issue will be resolved by President
it's a great attempt, beginning by recognizing that the current architecture that was drawn after World War II is no longer working. If you go back to heard my 3 speeches at the UN, you will hear that I was really critical on the architecture and how the architecture was failing to solve the issues that we need to solve. So do I put hopes on the Board of Peace? Yes, I will do all my effort. And I'm putting all my faith also on the coming election of the Secretary General of the United Nations. You know that after 40 years, the Western Hemisphere will have to choose because this is a rotated by region. Yes. So I hope that Rafael Grossi will be the next Secretary General of the United Nations.
You know, I interviewed him and that was a major pitch that Rafael had made because he is looking at the United Nations. Let's see whether that works out. My final leg of questions is on India. You visited India. The conversations were great. But right now, we're looking at an India-US deal finally coming about. What's your reaction and response, President, to an India-US trade deal?
I think it's great. And I think this is probably one of the greatest contributions of President Trump. I was mentioning that in MERCOSUR, we were able to close an agreement with the EU, which is now the largest free trade agreement in the history. Now they're calling that there might be a larger one coming, but now the largest one is the EU and MERCOSUR. And it was only done because European countries understood that they need to integrate. And the alliance that they built in the past, they cannot rely only on those alliances. So I think President Trump has been regarded for many of the trade talks that they are taking over now. Of course, India and the US, they have a long-standing relation, and having them an agreement is great. We would love from MERCOSUR also to have an agreement with India. India is not a country, it's not a continent, it's a civilization. I was so amazed visiting India last year, having a conversation with Prime Minister Modi, which I admired, by the way. But I think that there's so much to gain in integrating countries, in having this type of conversation. Of course, at a moment where the US is trying to prioritize their own interests and protecting their own market, okay? There is a lot of...
But President Peña, are you okay? Is weaponization of tariff acceptable to you?
I think it's shaking the world. I think it's taking us out of our comfort zone. And I think that's good. So as Charles Darwin always said in their theory of the species, is not the largest one or the strongest one, is the one that is able to adapt to the changes that will survive. So I think that the mojo now is who's going to survive.
That's a very important one. The India-EU deal is being called mother of all the deals. There is an India-US deal, and there could be more.
Yes.
What would you look at, and how would you look or characterize the India-US deal? And are you expecting something with Paraguay as well?
Absolutely. I know that President Lula is heading to India in the coming weeks, and he has also the mandate from MERCOSUR countries that we are eager to have as much free trade agreements as possible. So, of course, we would love to have. And I would say, I don't know which will be the mother or the father, but let's put the top 3 agreements in the world will be US, India, EU, and of course, MERCOSUR and India.
Well, on that note, because trade deals are the newest trend when it comes to international geopolitics. Thank you so much, President Peña, for joining us. It was indeed a pleasure.
Yes.